All right, we're gonna tie Greg Hoover's cicada pattern, a slight variation of the original. Basically, we're going to reduce one step. That is the dub body. This is a very simple, very useful pattern to have whenever you're dealing with the 17-year periodical cicada. When these insects are on the water, I do not remember the fish ever becoming overly selective. So the pattern doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to basically fit the bill of size, shape, and color, which this does beautifully, and it works great and is easy to tie. So let's get to it. Materials we're going to use: hook is going to be a 2302 Tiemco, or find some alternate. We're going to have a fluorescent orange 6/0 thread. This is Semperfli. We're going to be using a 3mm black foam, orange crystal flash for the wings, and then some silly legs or some orange legs with some black flecks. Pretty simple. Again, doesn't need to be complicated. If you don't have those exact materials, just find something that is close enough. Again, these fish do not become overly selective when you have this feeding frenzy on the water. Okay, to get started, we have our hook with our thread attached maybe about 2/3 of the way down the actual curve of the hook. To get started, we're going to have our foam that's been cut into a strip, and we're going to just notch the tip. Now, this isn't necessary, but I like doing this to just create a little easier tie-in location to secure the foam to the hook. Before I do that, I'm going to just take a little bit of crazy glue, super glue, Zap-A-Gap, doesn't really matter, and just put a little bit here on top of the hook. And then we're just going to lay the tip of that foam right on top. And when we attach this, we're going to make a couple loose wraps and then snug it. And what we're going to do is we're going to work our way down the foam. One of the keys when you're tying in foam, even with a thicker thread like this, you want to make a couple loose wraps and then tighten it up, make a couple loose wraps, make a little tighter, make a few more wraps, and then make it the tightest. And when you do that, you're going to secure that without cutting the foam with the thread. The other thing about the super glue, it just kind of helps hold and prevents slippage. Because even if you are tying this foam on securely, there's always going to be a little chance of it kind of sliding off the side. So adding some super glue does help lock it into place and keeps it from rolling, basically. Now, once I have my foam on there, I'm just going to take my thread, just kind of work my way down and then back up. I'm not necessarily worried about covering the entire section of black foam, because quite honestly, when you look at the underside of a cicada, the periodical cicada, there's going to be a nice mix of like black and orange. So it's actually kind of nice to have a little bit of that combination of black and orange. And then just moving forward, we're just going to take our thread, and I'm going to try to do my best to cover most of the hook shank with this 6/0 thread. And if you're using a 3/0, it's going to be a little easier, a little quicker to cover that. We're going to just go up to the eye. All right. Once I have that in place, all we're doing now is we're just going to flip the foam forward. And what I'll do here as well is being very careful not to hit the hook eye. Just put a little drop there. Fold this forward. 2, 3 wraps. Get a little tighter. 2, 3 wraps. Tighter. 2, 3 wraps. 4. Make it tightest. And there. Okay. That's going to be your anchor on the front end. This is going to be a bullet style head with a foam. So to give us this bullet head, because we're going to basically reverse this front flap backwards onto itself, what we're going to do is we're going to take our thread and we're going to go back maybe 1/3 of the way down the hook shank. And we're going to make a couple loose wraps and then snug it down nice and tight. A couple loose wraps, snug it down nice and tight. We're just going to keep doing that. And once in a while you'll find that the foam's going to roll. That's fine. Just kind of retorque it with your thumb and your index finger and get it back into the position where you want. And you're going to look something like this. All right. Now, the wing material, you can use whatever wing material, but Greg Hoover always used the crystal flash. I love this. You can use a combination. Some fly tires will use just orange. Some people will use white. Some people will actually mix white and orange. It doesn't really matter in my opinion. So we're just going to use some orange, regular orange. crystal flash. And what I did here is I actually, usually whenever I'm working with crystal flash with different basically sections of it to keep it from coming apart when I'm going from fly to fly, because one of these will last me a couple flies. To keep this from going all over the fly tying table, I'll actually just stick this in water or moisten this with my mouth to kind of keep those tips sort of stuck together. Now we're just going to take the flash screw. Now all this is, we just pick up a liberal amount, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a section on one side, and then I'm going to flip this section back on the opposite side. We'll show you what's going on here. So we just want to make sure we have a little overhang, and we can always trim. So when in doubt, you can go a little bit longer, and then if you need to, you can always shorten it up. A couple loose wraps here, and really snug it down nice and tight. And then we're just going to take this front flap, fold it back here, and we're going to secure that. So essentially it's going to be looking like a spent spinner. You know, you're going to have a little bit of wing material over top, but the idea also is to have it kind of like around on the skirt, kind of around the entire hook shank. So we're just going to make a cut now. And what you can do is you can literally, with your fingers, if you want to pull this more off the side, you can, so you kind of have a little bit more coverage, almost like 180-degree coverage around. So once you have that, you're going to take your foam on the front forward position, just push it back. What that's going to do is going to fan it out to the side. And when these insects lay in the water, their wings are going to be spent, just like a spent spinner. So we're just going to take our foam with our bullet head, fold it back, just securing this. Nothing super tight, but just tight enough to lock this in. I'm just going to go back and forth. And one of the keys here is that with this bullet head, this section right here, what I want is I want this valley between the bullet head and the rest of the body to be a little bit of a width, have some width. I don't want it super narrow, because when I tie in my legs here in the next step, I want the legs to have a nicer kind of wider V rather than being super tight. So by opening this up here a little bit, it allows my legs to sort of spread out when I tie these in, as you'll see. So we're just going to lock this in, kind of spread out that valley, so to speak. We're just going to trim. Also with this pattern, I don't have a difficult time seeing this on the water, but if you do, you can always add like a piece of fluorescent orange or a fluorescent piece of yellow on top of this to act as like an indicator or like a hot spot, something, or like basically like an indicator, so you can see a little bit better on the water. So right now we have our legs. They're going to be in place here in just a moment, but we have our wings on top, splayed out to the side. And we're just going to do the last step, which is just taking some rubber legs, break this off, and we're just going to tie this in off the side. Lay this on the side here, lock this in, just take one loop, and then you can reorient it, and making sure that you have that nice valley. It's going to give you the ability to kind of have those legs kind of spanned out. Now we have a little flash here that's getting in the way. We're going to get rid of that. Boom. All right. So we have that set in. We're going to do a set on the far, and we'll do a set on the near. One wrap, set it, and then secure it. The legs are about maybe a little bit shorter than the length of the body. Again, it's just, if you want to add longer legs, you can do that. You just want to make sure that the legs are not long enough to the point where it's going to foul itself when it's casting or when it's fishing. Just very, very simple fly. Now, this took a little while, close to 8 minutes to basically tie and demonstrate this, but if you have all your ducks in a row and ready to go, it's not going to take that long to actually tie this fly. And to finish the fly off, what we're going to do is just do a Whitlock super glue or a Zap-A-Gap whip finish, what he would used to do. Just take your thread and then just maybe about an inch and a half, coat that with super glue, crazy glue, Zap-A-Gap, whatever. Just go over, lock that in, couple wraps, snug that down a little bit, keep some tension, blow on it if you have to, and then relax, tension, and trim. And that is going to be a super secure whip finish. But there you have it. This is just a little variation. Greg Hoover would often put dubbing on the bottom of this fly, and one of the advantages to dubbing when you're tying this fly is that dubbing is going to collect moisture. Even if you use like orange chenille, it's going to collect moisture. So when the fly lands, it's going to create a little bit more of an impact. So if you want to do dubbing, you can easily do that. The other thing you can do to actually create more of a dense underside, to also create that smack, you can take UV resin, you can take Sally Hansen's Hard as Nail Polish, and you can coat this with a UV resin on the underside. I'm sure this will add some durability, but what this will also do is it will add some mass, and it's going to create a harder surface. So when the fly does land, it's going to create some impact. And there you have it. This is just a beautiful fly that I used 17 years ago, and probably will be using this quite regularly here in the coming months when the cicadas come here to central Pennsylvania. But just wanted to kind of share this slight variation of the original pattern. I think it's a little quicker, a little easier to tie, and just as effective. So last tip I want to give you is that when you are fishing cicadas, just make sure that you listen with your ears. You know, this is a massive infestation, but it doesn't occur everywhere. There are what you'll find are like little pockets or sections where this hatch occurs. So when you're walking up and down a stream or even along a lake, follow your ears. Wherever the noise is most deafening, the loudest and the craziest, that's where you're going to have obviously the highest concentration of bugs, and that is where you're going to have those insects falling in the water and creating a feeding frenzy. So if I don't hear much noise where I'm walking or where I'm fishing and I don't see much activity, I'm usually just going to take off and start walking until I start hearing. And as soon as you start hearing these insects, you're going to be seeing fish rise. So that's it. Good luck with the cicadas this year. If it happens to occur in your area, or if you tend to go to an area where it's going to be happening, it's something that all people should experience, because it really is kind of a once in a lifetime, or in this case, once in a 17-year occurrence that just creates really some of the best fishing for anything that swims in the water. So take care and have a great day.